Going back to Atta just for a moment, you may have made him an apostate, but in the last moments when he's on the plane, he builds for himself a mind picture which he's going to use to deal with the fact that they're about to murder the airline hostess, and he dreams of or thinks of a situation in the past which once again points up this obsession you believe these terrorists have with women.
Yeah, he recalls a time when this actually happened to a friend of mine. He was on the plane where a lot of Muslims filed into the aisle and started praying, and the pilot was saying that he'd have to return the plane to Bahrain unless they sat down. And then suddenly this huge beauty appeared, you know, with, as my Uruguayan friend said, you know, the makeup, the suit, the big tits, and just shrieked at them, "Vamos, you know, vamos arriba, coños, on your feet, you." And they did. And Mohammed Atta was present on that plane in my story, and he feels a murderous urge there because he's seeing a woman empowered.
There is a broader argument you're making here about the need for reformation within Islam. You suggest the necessary upheaval is a revolution, the liberation of women. Could it happen?
Yeah, I think that's utopian for now. I mean, I think what's going to happen next is it's been argued that the most momentous consequence of the Iraq War will be the ignition of the civil war between the Sunni and the Shia, which has been brewing for a millennium. Now, Pakistan's bomb is the Sunni bomb. If Iran gets the bomb, that'll be the Shia bomb. And we've got to imagine something like a 30 years war, nuclear 30 years war, or 100 years war, to get this, get the sectarian stuff out of the way. Then we've got to twiddle our thumbs while they have a reformation, and then in due course an enlightenment, and then perhaps the Middle East will be ready for democracy and for sexual equality.
You that war between Sunni and Shia, you think is a direct result, or may well be a direct result of the war in Iraq?
No. I mean, it's been brewing for 1,000 years. The ignition of it may be entirely attributable to Iraq, but the enmity is age-old.
I took your advice, Martin Amis, in the essay. I googled the words al-Sistani and sex, and I found there were 170,000 entries. Now, for anyone who's uncertain who we're talking about, we should state that Ayatollah al-Sistani is the most powerful Shia Muslim cleric in Iraq. The most recent entries...
He's also...
Yes, just finish here. The most recent entries talk about an online fatwa in which he calls for the killing of lesbians and gay men in the worst, most severe way possible. The trouble is, of course, that al-Sistani is the moderate Ayatollah whom the West is banking on.
He's far and away the most moderate voice in Iraq. And actually some of his advice about sex I found very helpful, quite moderate really. But he again is, you've got to think of him as on the left and the most liberal of these voices. And as you have read, he has murderous hostility towards women.
Now, reflecting as you have very recently, not only in your essay but in other articles, on everything that's happened since September 11, you outline the opposing sides, murderous fanaticism on the part of the terrorists, and in Washington a vertiginous power rush that has finally evolved into self-hypnosis. Tell us what you mean by that.
Well, I think the really tragic moment with Iraq was not the weapons of mass destruction business, because every intelligence agency on earth thought Iraq had these weapons. Even the Iraqi intelligence service thought they had them. In fact, Saddam was lying about it because he was terrified that Iraq or Syria would take advantage of his not having them. So that's a side issue, I think, very important and all that. But when we lost it, I think, when it was just visible in every dash and comma of Bush's body language that he submitted to a huge power surge. American hegemony was something of an abstraction before September the 11th. Then suddenly it became a war plan, cracked out on the president's desk, and he was looking at capabilities, not just possibilities. And, we all know what power does. It screws us up even when we have the tiniest bit of it. And suddenly this tax-cutting dry drunk from West Texas was the most powerful man in human history. And there's no culture in America for trying to put checks on the power rush, as there is in England, in old Europe, as Rumsfeld insultingly called it. Blair would be very aware of this danger, but Bush wasn't, and he looked like a drunk in a bar. He looked as though he'd just done a snowball of cocaine. And he recruited all around him with an ideological filter so that everyone on the team was on the team and no dissenting voices were allowed. And classic march of folly. And there wasn't a plan for the peace. There was no plan.
Martin Amis, we're nearly out of time, but I can't leave without mentioning one of the strangest things about your essay on horrorism, and that is that in it you describe a work that you've actually abandoned, a satirical novel which draws on many of the themes we've been talking about. It's a very rare thing for a writer to talk in detail about a work they've abandoned. In this case, I presume it's because satire simply can't do justice to the actual story.
It's not quite that. It's more that this is becoming. We've started this war very badly, and this is becoming more and more serious. And when I realized that there were young Englishmen living in my country who wanted to convert to Islam for the mere purpose of suicide, mass murder, I thought that this thing, Islamism, which is trying to poison the world, is actually mutating like bird flu. And I suddenly thought, how funny will my novella be after a dirty bomb in London, say, or some other big disaster. And really, I just felt I was giving such an enormous hostage to fortune. I'll write that story when the war is over, if it ever is.
You may never live that long, Martin Amis, but I'm afraid we haven't got time to spend that long talking to you. We have to leave it there for our talk tonight. We thank you very much for taking the time to come in and talk to us.
Pleasure.